A man reads one statistic, that the web is growing 2,300% a year, quits a very good Wall Street job, and drives across the country to sell books out of a rented garage.
And that statistic, by the way, is the one everybody quotes, and it's the one that actually checks out. 1994. He's at a hedge fund, he sees the number, and he leaves. I'm Diego Cruz. I spend most of my time chasing down whether the famous version of a story survived contact with the record. That one did.
Oh, I'm Clara Devlin, and I've been circling this man for years because the arc is almost too neat. Garage bookstore to owning a newspaper, a rocket company, and for a while, the title of richest human alive.
And I'm Omar Haddad, and I keep coming back to one image. This is a guy who in his high school graduation speech apparently talked about moving heavy industry off the planet so Earth could be a giant national park. 17, 18 years old. He was already thinking about space colonies before he'd sold a single book.
Is that documented, Omar, or is that one of the shiny ones?
A local paper reportedly quoted him around then. The national park line shows up in enough places that I'll stand near it, if not on top of it. That's the correct amount of standing.
What gets me is the drive itself, New York to Seattle, and the story goes that Mackenzie, his wife at the time, is driving while he's typing out the business plan in the passenger seat.
On a laptop, in a moving car, in 1994. Picture the battery life alone. And she's not incidental to this. She handled the books, the actual accounting, some of the early freight negotiations. When people tell the founding as one man and a garage, they're editing her out.
They really are. And there's the detail about the hedge fund he was leaving. The boss he worked for reportedly took him on a 2-hour walk to talk him out of it. Told him it was a fine idea for someone who didn't already have a good job.
And the way Bezos later framed the decision is worth repeating, because it's the one bit of his self-mythology I'll defend. He said he imagined himself at 80, looking back and asking which choice he'd regret less. Not which pays more, which he'd regret less. A regret minimization framework, he called it. Very engineer, that, turning should I risk it into a formula.
So let's set the human ground first, because he doesn't start out as Bezos. He's born Jeffrey Jorgensen.
1964, Albuquerque. Mother, 17, a high schooler. Father, 19. That marriage doesn't last. She divorces before he's 2. And then she marries a Cuban immigrant, Miguel Bezos, who adopts the boy, and the surname changes. And Miguel had come to the United States as a teenager, more or less on his own. So the name on the world's biggest store is the name of a man who arrived with basically nothing.
That's a detail I never lose sight of. The Bezos in Amazon is an immigrant's name. Can we talk about the name Amazon itself, because he nearly called it something else entirely?
Cadabra, as in abracadabra, which apparently, set down a phone line, sounded like cadaver. Not the association you want for a company handling your credit card.
So he lands on Amazon, biggest river in the world, for what he wanted to be the biggest store. But there's a second reason that tells you exactly how his mind works.
The letter A. Early web directories listed things alphabetically, so a name starting with A floats to the top of the page. Which is the whole man in one decision. It's romantic, the great river, and it's coldly tactical. Get to the top of the list, both at once.
And the money to start it, this is one I want to be careful with, comes substantially from his parents.
Reportedly around $300,000 from Mike and Jackie. And the piece I always want people to sit with, he told them and told other early investors that there was something like a 70% chance the whole thing fails. He said that to his own mother and father. Here's the pitch. Most likely you lose it.
Which is either brutal or the kindest thing you can do, depending.
It's a bet on the family, not the business. They weren't investing in books, they were investing in him.
And the base rate said they should have lost it. Most of those dot-com bets did.
Paint the garage itself for a second, Omar, because I think people picture something cleaner than it was.
It was a converted garage in a rented house in the Seattle suburbs. Desks built out of doors laid across sawhorses because doors were cheaper than desks. That's not a legend, by the way. The door desk became an internal symbol. They handed out awards named after it for years. And that thrift wasn't just poverty, it was doctrine. Frugality is written into the company's official principles to this day. The idea being that constraints breed invention. If you can't throw money at a problem, you have to think your way through it.
So it's books first, deliberately. Why books, Omar? Because it's not obvious if you're going to build the everything store that you start with paperbacks.
Because books are the perfect first product. There are millions of titles. No physical shop on earth can stock them all. They don't spoil, they're easy to ship, and every copy of a given book is identical, so nobody's disappointed by the one they get. It's a category built for a warehouse and a website. And there's a supply chain reason too. Book distribution already ran through a couple of huge wholesalers, so a tiny startup could offer a catalog of 1 million titles without physically stocking 1 million titles. You order from the wholesaler once the customer clicks. Low inventory, huge selection. That's the trick.
And he always meant to expand. Books were the wedge, not the point.
Right, 1998, music and video. Then a spray of other goods. And this is the era of the motto everyone remembers. Get big fast. Grab the ground before anyone else does. Worry about profit later. Later being the operative word. This company loses money for years. Publicly, unapologetically.
And this is where I think the modern picture goes fuzzy, because we think of Amazon as this unstoppable machine. It very nearly wasn't. Take us to the bad years, Diego.
2000, the bubble bursts. Amazon had bought into companies like Pets.com and a piece of Cosmo.com. Both of them basically evaporate. By the end of that year, Bezos has borrowed around $2 billion, and the cash on hand had dropped to something like $350 million. Which sounds like a lot until you realize how fast a company that size burns it. There was a famous Barron's piece around then. The nickname it hung on the company was Amazon.bomb.
Oh, that's cruel.
Cruel, and at the time, not unreasonable. He closes distribution centers, lays off something like 14% of the workforce. And then in 2003, the thing finally turns a profit. A modest one, tens of millions. After nearly a decade! Think about the nerve that takes. Every quarter, someone in a suit is telling you the numbers say stop.
And he had a really unusual argument for why they shouldn't stop, which was the profit isn't the scoreboard, cash flow is. Take every dollar and shove it back into growth.
And you can debate whether that was visionary or whether he just got to keep playing because investors let him. But the shareholder letters from that era are consistent about it. He told them, essentially, this is the deal. Don't buy the stock if you don't like it. He put the warning in writing. Same energy as telling his parents there's a 70% chance you lose everything.
And there's a phrase from those letters people forget. It's all about the long term. He kept reattaching the very first shareholder letter to every subsequent one, year after year, as if to say, nothing's changed, this was always the plan.
Which is a rhetorical move as much as a strategic one. If you reprint your original promise every year, you can always claim you never wavered. It's hard to accuse someone of moving the goalposts when they hand you the original goalposts annually.
Now here's the twist that I think is the real business story. The thing that eventually mints the fortune isn't the store, it's the plumbing behind the store.
Amazon Web Services. And this is my favorite kind of origin, because it comes out of a problem, not a plan.
To run a giant website reliably, they had to build enormous, flexible computing power for themselves. And then someone asks the obvious question. If we've built all this capacity, why are we the only ones renting it? Yes, you built the road for your own trucks. Now let everyone drive on it and pay a toll. That's the whole idea. They rent out computing by the hour. And today, an enormous slice of the internet you use runs on Amazon's machines, quietly, in the background.
And this is the bit people miss when they think Amazon, oh, the cardboard boxes. A huge amount of the profit, the part that actually pays for the rockets and everything else, comes from that cloud business, not from selling you a phone charger.
It's worth being precise. The retail operation runs on famously thin margins. The cloud is where the money is dense. So the mental image of Amazon as a shop is financially almost backwards. The shop is the thing, you see. The cloud is the thing that pays.
And there was a real head start there, wasn't there? They were out in front of the other giants by a few years. And in that kind of business, being early is close to being unbeatable.
That's the point people underrate. Once a company builds its whole operation on your servers, moving off is painful and expensive, so an early lead compounds. Amazon spent years as the largest player before the rivals took it seriously, and that lead is a big part of why the cloud is so profitable for them now.
And the Kindle sits in here too, doesn't it? That same instinct to control the whole stack.
2007, and there's a nice detail from a profile of that period. He reportedly wanted reading on the device to feel like a flow state, the way a good video game pulls you in. Make the machine disappear so the book takes over. Which is a lovely goal from the man simultaneously destroying the bookstores that sold the paper ones.
And there it is, the tension we're going to keep bumping into. Because we can't tell this as pure triumph. The convenience we all use, one click, it's on the doorstep tomorrow, that's built on something.
The warehouses, the fulfillment centers. There's been years of reporting, workers describing the pace, the targets, how closely the work is tracked, injury rates that have drawn real scrutiny. The magic of it arrives tomorrow has a body doing the running. And I want to be careful and fair here. Amazon disputes a lot of the specific characterizations, and conditions vary hugely site to site. But the broad pattern that this is physically demanding, heavily measured work under intense time pressure, that's well documented across a lot of independent reporting. It's not a fringe claim. And the measurement is the part that stays with me. In a lot of these places, the software tracks how long a worker is idle, down to the minute. The efficiency that lets you find a specific book in a warehouse the size of several football fields is the same efficiency pointed back at the person doing the finding.
Oh, and on the other side of the ledger, the company will point to the raised minimum wage, to the sheer number of jobs, hundreds of thousands of people.
Both things are true at once. It employs an enormous number of people, and how that work feels from the inside is a real ongoing argument. I don't think you get to resolve it in a sentence. And then there's what it did to Main Street. The bookshops first, then far beyond books. The convenience is real. So is the empty storefront.
This is the thing about him I find hardest to hold in one hand. The same relentlessness that gets you your medicine by tomorrow morning is the relentlessness that grinds down the person picking it off the shelf. It's one engine. You can't have the nice half without the other half.
And he'd argue the customer is the point. He said versions of that for decades. Obsess over the customer and everything else follows. Critics would say everything else, including the people inside, becomes a cost to be optimized. Customer first. The question is, who's second?
That's the whole debate in 4 words, Omar. Let's pull up and out, literally, because in 2000 he starts Blue Origin, a rocket company, and here we're back to the 18-year-old with the National Park speech.
This is not a midlife whim. This is the through line of his entire life. He has apparently believed since he was a teenager that heavy industry should move off Earth, that our planet should be protected, and that millions of people will one day live and work in space. Amazon you could almost read as the fundraiser. And in 2021, he actually flies, steps down as chief executive of Amazon. Andy Jassy, who'd run the cloud business, takes over. And then Bezos goes up on Blue Origin's own rocket. Brief suborbital hop, but he's physically up there.
The kid who gave the space speech, going to space. There's something almost unbearably tidy about that.
And notice who he handed the company to. The man who built the cloud, not the man who ran the store. Even the succession tells you where he thought the real value sat. That's a sharp read, Omar. Whether Blue Origin becomes anything more than a very expensive view, that's still open. It's been slower than its noisier rival, fewer headline launches. But he said his own approach is deliberate. Tortoise, not hare. Their motto translates roughly to step by step, ferociously. Whether that patience pays off, we genuinely can't say yet.
And then, 8 years before the rocket ride, 2013, he buys the Washington Post, personally. This isn't Amazon.
Around $250 million out of his own pocket. A storied paper in real financial trouble, like most papers then. And people were nervous. A tech billionaire buys one of the great American newspapers? Is he going to hollow it out, turn it into a gadget?
And for a good while, the story was actually the opposite. Investment, growth, the paper leaning hard into its own reporting. Though I'd add, more recently there's been real friction and turmoil in that newsroom over its direction. So it hasn't stayed a simple good news story.
Which is the honest shape of it? It's not villain guts newspaper, and it's not hero sieves newspaper. It's messier and still unfolding. The man contains multitudes, and most of them are unresolved.
There's one more that I can't leave out because it's so revealing. He's put money into trying to slow or reverse aging itself, a company called Altos Labs.
Of course he has. The man who wanted the biggest store, the tallest rocket, now the longest life. And to be accurate, the science here is real science, not snake oil. Aging happens at the cellular level. There's the telomeres, those little protective caps on the ends of your DNA that shorten each time a cell divides. Like the plastic tip on a shoelace. Once it frays, the whole thing starts to come apart. That's exactly the comparison the biologists use. And there are these senescent cells that stop dividing but won't die and pile up as you get older. In mice, clearing them out delayed signs of aging quite dramatically.
In mice?
In mice, which is the crucial hedge. Nobody honestly knows if any of this extends a human life. The deeper question, why we age at all, is still really open. There may be several right answers. And the specific approach Altos is chasing is even wilder, reprogramming, taking an old cell and coaxing it back toward a younger state. There's genuine Nobel-winning science under that idea. Whether you can do it in a living body without, say, causing cancer is the enormous open door nobody's walked through. That caveat matters. The same reprogramming that could rejuvenate a cell can also unleash it. So reverse aging and cause a tumor sit uncomfortably close together in the lab. This is early and it's hard. But you see the pattern. Every frontier he finds, he doesn't ask, is this possible? He asks, why hasn't someone done it yet? And treats the no as a temporary condition.
And the money makes the question different for him than for the rest of us. Around $280 billion recently. When you're at that number, impossible stops being a wall and starts being a budget line.
And that's the thing worth sitting with. One person deciding which impossible problems get billions thrown at them. Space, death, and newspaper.
That's enormous private power over the shape of the future. You can admire the ambition and still be uneasy about who's holding the steering wheel.
Because none of us voted on space colonies or on which anti-aging bet gets funded. It just happens because one man finds it interesting.
Right. And historically, that used to be the job of governments or big foundations, spread across a lot of decision makers. Now, a single fortune can equal a national research budget. That's not automatically bad. It can move fast where committees stall. But it does concentrate the choice of what the future even tries to become.
So let's land it. When the two of you step back from all of it, the garage, the machine, the rockets, what's the thing that stays?
For me, it's the consistency of the dream. Show me the teenager with the space speech, and I'll show you every decision he ever made. Most of us abandon what we wanted at 18. He built a $200 billion company to fund his. What stays for me is the reframing of failure. 70% chance we go bust, said out loud, in writing, to his parents, to shareholders. Years of losses defended on principle. He made comfort with likely failure into a working method. That's rarer than the money, and honestly, more interesting than the money.
And for me, it's that he's the clearest case I know of a single person you cannot sort into hero or villain and have it hold. The same drive delivers your parcel overnight and drives the person who packed it. Saved a newspaper, unsettled a newsroom, wants to protect the earth by leaving it. You have to keep both hands full at once.
And refuse the tidy verdict.
Which, for a man who wanted everything alphabetized and top of the list, is maybe the least Bezos way to end. Messy and unfinished and still going up.
That's the man.
To the giant national park in the sky.
On that, we'll leave him. Thank you both. First time round the table, and I'd do it again.
Likewise. Anytime.
This episode was generated with AI by Demades.